All right, we are going to watch a video about the coelacanth. I do love coelacanth. There was a time early in my career as a fish biologist and early along the days when I made YouTube videos where coelacanth were my favorite fish. In fact, yeah, my number one was coelacanth at the time. Coelacanth were, for a long time, my number one fish. Now, when I got more into native species and started, loving the minnows all around me, I fell more in love with some shiners and native things, but for a long time, coelacanths were my first love.
As an experienced captain, Yerson rarely saw fish he didn't recognize, so he called the local museum to see if anyone knew what it was.
Okay, am I crazy or is this already wrong? This isn't what happened, right? I mean, okay, maybe he's telling a future story, but the rediscovery of the coelacanth happened at a fish market, right? I'm not crazy. I don't have my history perfect, but I thought it happened. The original species was rediscovered at a fish market, I thought. Or at least one of the species. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. We'll see.
The fish looked like no species anyone had ever seen. Actually, that isn't quite true. There was one kind of fish this strange specimen resembled, a species called the coelacanth. But there was a slight problem with that. Coelacanths had been extinct for more than 60 million years. Or had they?
Real.
Fast forward more than 80 years to today, and that weird blue fish is widely considered to have been one of the greatest zoological discoveries in history.
I would be interested to find out. I'm sure he's going to talk about like evolutionary relationships and how, things went along. Also, I have a blanket. Don't judge me. It's cold in my apartment. I think the windows are leaking. What would I be curious? Oh, I would be curious to find out, like, I know you can't theoretically do this, but like a graph of population numbers along the years of coelacanth. So like there's 66 million years where they're missing from the fossil record, right? For a long time. So for 66 million years, what did the population look like? Like, did they survive pretty comfortably? Have they been, we know nowadays they're actually pretty comfortable. They're protected because they can be vulnerable to certain modern fishing practices, but like population wise, they're okay. Both species are okay. It'd be interesting to find out, did they get close to extinction, or did the fossil record just start being biased against them? Because it's something you have to remember about fossils is they're very biased. Fossils only form under extremely specific scenarios, and not all creatures can even be fossilized, and the ones that can be fossilized might need even more improbable scenarios to end up fossilized. Over a long enough period of time, it's supposed to correct itself, but, evolution can be biased against some species becoming fossils. Could look at genetic diversity to get an idea of their past population size. Maybe if you had a frame of reference in what genetic diversity means in that case. The best thing to look at would, I don't even know how you would go about quantifying it. Everything is made up. Taxonomy isn't real. We can accept that taxonomy isn't real. It's just cool. It's the numbers are all relative to other numbers, right? So it's all just our best estimate. Anyways, I just thought it would be cool to know whether coelacanths had survived well for a long time.
Amongst its many accolades, it's the oldest surviving species of fish on the planet, having first appeared more than 400 million years ago.
It's the oldest surviving species of fish on the planet. It's the oldest surviving... No. Right? Okay, I know lungfish don't predate coelacanth, but like chimera have to, right? There's no way chimera of some sort, some holocephalid, don't predate. Maybe he means group. Maybe coelacanth as a group are older than any modern living fish on the planet, but this specific species, there's absolutely no chance that that's true. There are some truly like untouched things out there. Yeah, if he means that like, coelacanthiforms or whatever as an order, then maybe he has a point.
It has the longest gestation period of any animal at 5 years, and remarkably enough...
What? Coelacanth have a 5-year gestation period? Surely that's not true. I would have known that, right? Coelacanth gestation period. That is true? Bro. Okay. It is true, but African element... Oh, wait, this says 22 months. Why did I think this said 22 years? Wait, I thought blue whales were longer. 12 animals with the longest gestation period. Number 1, elephants, 22 months. 3 camels. They're not even mentioning it. 15 months. 2 to 3 years. Okay. Well, Google's not very helpful in that case, so we'll take him at face value. If I wanted to do more research, if I had time, I would, but...
Just in case that wasn't enough for you, this not-so-humble fish has even found itself at the center of one of the biggest debates in human history. Evolution versus creation. With both creationists and evolutionists believing the coelacanth proves that they're right about the origins of life on Earth.
Unfortunately, I'm pretty sure this has been disproven. There was a while where when the coelacanth was discovered, we were like, holy crap, this is the missing link, right? So we've got like the tick to lick, but like this is something that we can actively study nowadays with genetics and prove the genetic link between ocean-dwelling fish and the mammals that walked on land, and then, you know, eventually humans. But I think it ended up not being a missing link. It's more like a taxonomic dead end. It has a common ancestor, of course, so everything does with what walked on land, but it's not the one. It didn't become the thing that walks on land. I think that was like a lungfish breakoff. I don't know. My evolutionary history is not the best. I did have an evolutionary history class in college. That was kind of cool, but I didn't really pay attention to my classes. Whoopsies.
Louis Agassiz was one of the most important naturalists of the 19th century. He founded the scientific discipline of glaciology and created the world-renowned Museum of Comparative Zoology.
Man, that's
but probably
so
his
sick.
most famous work came in the field of ichthyology.
I'm so jealous. I don't think it would be a fun job in the long term, but working with like a museum specimen collection, especially of like local fishes that I know a lot about, just sounds so damn cool. Just being like, oh, here's a freaking pearl dace from the 1700s, right? Like the Civil War was going on, and or not the Civil War, the Revolutionary War is going on, and we're documenting pearl dace, and there were bridle shiners. That's crazy. George Washington probably came within a few feet of like rare shiner that we've not even discovered yet because it went extinct. Whatever. It's just crazy.
That's the study of fish.
The history of animals is so cool.
Agassiz classified hundreds of fish species during his long and illustrious career, including everyone's favourite horror from the deep, the megalodon. But in 1839, he described another new species, a slightly less impressive specimen.
That's a pretty good fossil.
80-million-year-old fossilized tail. He named it the coelacanth. That all changed 20 years later, when some English bloke called Charlie published a book called On the Origin of Species. And it sent shockwaves through the scientific world and beyond.
It scares me when videos like this talk about things that I'm not 100% confident in. Because just in the intro, we identified like 2 errors already with the information. And that was just the background information about the fish. This is what scares me, is because it's like now I'm listening and my brain just naturally wants to take in the information and be like, oh yeah, cool, good information. But if I noticed when he talked about something that I had expertise in that there were errors, there's probably errors when he talks about stuff that I don't have expertise in. I just would never notice, which is unfortunate.
Unsurprisingly, plenty of people didn't really fancy that, and some made it their mission to pick holes in Darwin.
I don't need a history of...
These lobes contained bones that correspond to those found in the upper arms and legs of land vertebrates, and they were connected to distinctly unfishy shoulder joints. In other words, the coelacanth appeared to be a Darwinist's holy grail, a genuine transitional fossil. And this wasn't just any old transition.
Sad. I wonder if we ever will find it. It's crazy. Fossils are just so random. It's so effed up. There are so many fossils in the world, and so many we have discovered and so many we've yet to discover. And there's still probably millions of species that we will just never know existed because they did not fossilize properly. All fossils are transitional. Well, I guess all evolution is constant, so all animals and everything are transitional in a way of speaking. But I think they meant an important transitional fossil. But it wasn't that, sadly. It'd be cool if we did find that, but even proving that would be ridiculous.
Over the following decades, more coelacanth fossils were found. The most recent were around 66 million years old, and the oldest were a staggering 410 million years old. To put that number into context, the coelacanth evolved before trees.
You guys know that? Trees and grass are a fairly new thing. That's just a fun fact. I think it's the same with the megalodon. It was around before grass or trees or something like that. It's just the world looked very different.
Out of nowhere, the coelacanth flopped its way onto the front page of newspapers all over the world. Marjorie Courtenay-Latimer was the curator of a museum in the South African city of East London. So when she got a call from one Captain Hendrik Jursens asking her to have a look at the unusual blue fish he'd caught in his trawling net, she headed out at once. Marjorie convinced a local cab driver to bung the man-sized slime-covered fish into the boot of his car and take it to the East London Museum. The initial reaction from the staff there was actually...
That is funny that they had to taxi the fish. It's crazy to think about in this time. You had to have so much just knowledge on hand without any access to any sort of device or even catalog. Even book catalogs are just inconvenient, right? So you just had to have so much knowledge on hand that you could look at this and be like, hey, that's weird. Because we do this now, but I take it for granted, right? Like I used to work a job where we would catch and identify fish, and sometimes, we're working with only what's in New Jersey, so it's a fairly sparse list of options. And sometimes we catch things that it's like, well, that's a little weird. That's, it looks in between, or we're not exactly sure how to get that down to species. And we'll just put it in a jar with, alcohol, preserve it, and deal with it at the lab later and identify it later. The amount of knowledge that you have to, in like a biodiverse place in the ocean, recognize that something is different, and then the effort that it takes to get it to that preserving process is interesting. Something you take for granted nowadays.
There was general agreement that the fish looked a bit dodgy, but the museum's chairman thought it was probably a common rock cod that had fallen out of the ugly tree.
Damn, they thought it was a rock cod? But dissect. Show the fin with the bones in the... I suppose she doesn't know that yet, but there are bones in the fin. You can see.
He was confident the find was of huge scientific importance, because as far as he could tell, Marjorie had bagged herself a coelacanth. When people tell this story, they often overlook just how insane that call actually was. Just think about it.
Yeah, it's extremely impressive. I can't even imagine. This is like... this is like me being in the middle of work and like a random little shiner. We catch a random little shiner. It looks like slightly off, right? And one of my coworkers would be like, oh, it's a bridal, whatever. It's a common shiner. And I look at it and I'm like, no, this is a shiner that has been extinct for 50 million years and I've just rediscovered it. Like, that call is ridiculous. And not only that, he didn't even have the fish in hand. The dude made the call from a freaking letter, a drawing in a letter. It's crazy.
On a simple
God, I love extinct fish. It's so cool. I have 0 fish fossils. I have some fish teeth, some old like extinct shark teeth, and then I have a mosasaur tooth. But like, I have no like proper fish fossils where it's like, a fossilized species or something like that. Fish fossils are so cool. All of the times that I've been tempted to get into art and drawing have been because of fish fossils, because they're just so damn cool. I was at the New Jersey shore, and there was like a little beach shop that had one, and it was like $200 something. Like, I'm not doing that. It's cool as hell, and I really like extinct fish, but I ain't doing that.
But despite this mad rush, it was 12 long years before another coelacanth was captured.
This
time in the waters of the Comoro Islands. We now know that coelacanths move their leg-like lobes in an alternating pattern, a bit like a horse trotting, giving them amazing control in the water.
It is an important point that the limb-like note of their fins allows them to be more mobile in water, because a lot of times people, and don't get me wrong, and this is going to come off terribly, but evolution is wrong. Objectively, there are way too many things that evolution can't conclude on. It's the best theory we have, but evolution is, wrong. But a lot of people try to easy disprove evolution by talking about how these structures are so complex they can't just pop into existence one day, and them slowly coming into existence doesn't make sense in evolution because they'd have no advantage in the time that the fish is figuring it out. But these things that would eventually become limbs very clearly give the fish an advantage in the water, even when it's not a fully completed final form of the limb, which I think is an important point.
How is it possible that this species was unknown for so long? And why did the coelacanth drop out of the fossil record for more than 60 million years? Let's start with... Most coelacanths we know from the fossil record lived in shallow waters, and some were even freshwater species that lived in lakes and rivers.
What?
Those ecosystems...
Oh wait, I knew about that. Did you... Oh, I forgot about this. There was a theory I saw on Twitter that was like a discovery that he thinks will happen in his lifetime. And it was a small freshwater coelacanth, like a cave I don't know, somewhere like Southeast Asia, cave dwelling, freshwater coelacanth that's like this big. There was a guy that made that prediction. I was like, wow, that is an incredibly bold prediction, but wouldn't that be the craziest thing? That'd be so cool if there was a tiny freshwater coelacanth still in existence somewhere. It's worth mentioning, indigenous peoples probably knew the coelacanth existed long before it was scientifically described. Maybe it's possible, but the only way that they would come across it are wash-ups. I mean, even like the technologically advanced fishing nets of today would not catch a coelacanth, you know, without it being very purposefully targeting a coelacanth. So unless the, you know, native peoples got lucky with them washing up along shore and decided to look into it, there's a distinct possibility that they didn't know about it either. I mean, Native Americans didn't know about like deep sea fish, and there are plenty of deep sea fish that occasionally wash up along the beaches here. So it's not out of the realm of possibility to say that the one caught in the fishing market was one of the first that a human has ever laid eyes on, because it's just extremely unlikely that one would ever end up on the shores, even if it was gonna wash up. I mean, it dies so far down the process, it would likely be decomposed by then. Could you keep a coelacanth in captivity? You can theoretically keep anything in captivity. It's just extremely difficult and expensive most of the time. And then sometimes it doesn't work and we don't really know why, like some of the bigger sharks. So, I mean, you could try.
You'll often hear the coelacanth being referred to as a living fossil. For that reason, some creationists now consider the species to be a shining example of why evolution doesn't exist. After all, if it did, how could a species survive for hundreds of millions of years without evolving?
Because of course it evolved. Everything evolves. That's one of the, well, I don't really care much, but a lot of scientists have a pet peeve of people saying unchanged for millions, hundreds of millions of years, because it's not true, right? Nothing's unchanged for hundreds of millions of years.
In 1997, a couple on their honeymoon were wandering through a quaint fish market when they spotted something interesting. A large fish with distinctive lobe-shaped limbs in the city of Mando on the Indonesian island of Sulawesi. That's a good 6,000 miles away from the only known coelacanth population. After sending the fish away for DNA testing, scientists discovered that not one, but two coelacanth species had been hiding from us all along.
It's so funny that we found the extremely rare one first, but there's definitely more, right? I mean, like, there's no way those are the only two. What other close-to-shore deep-sea cave near islands? We've got a pretty distinct habitat type to look for now. Let's find more.
Let's just hope they can pull off just one more miracle and survive.
I think they'll be okay. There's a lot of things that can and will affect them, and a lot of things will be can and will affected by many things. What am I saying? I'm not putting words together. Whatever. End the video. Whoa.